Hi everyone, and welcome to this week's video. Thank you for being here with me. My name is Angel DeSantis. You might notice I'm in a different space this week. I moved this last week. That color, I think, is what this wall is going to turn into soon. But this week I wanted to make a video about the importance of self-care. And it directly relates to me being able to move into a new space. And the space that I moved into is a one-bedroom, and for all of my life since living alone pretty much, I have always chosen studios because I needed to be able to see all the exits, because I grew up in an apocalyptic cult and they always told me the Antichrist is going to come, his soldiers are going to get you and they're going to keep you as a sex slave. So as I would go to bed at like 5 years old, that was my worry. And that's just something that I kept with me. As I started living alone, I was like, well, remember, you need to know where the exits are because someone is always coming to get you. And I was very fearful. And I didn't think that it was a bad thing to be fearful, because I was like, no, I'm being cautious and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with living in a studio. So I didn't see why I needed to fix that. But I developed a self-care practice, and that has healed me enough to be able to motivate me out of a desire for joy. And I want to feel happy in the space that I'm in, and that's how I ended up picking this spot, which is a one-bedroom. And so when I'm in the bedroom, I can't see all the exits, but I still somehow feel safe. And that's a direct impact in my life from a self-care practice that I developed. And I just wanted to come on here and kind of talk about that and connect the dots and encourage you to start a self-care practice if you don't have one. And the reason that I think a self-care practice is so important, especially if you've grown up in religious trauma or a religiously oppressive and abusive environment, is that generally the teaching that the church or the religion gives you is that you are the bottom of the totem pole. So I'm sure that you guys have a variation of this as well. In our cult, there was Jesus and then others and you. And there was a song about how that's a wonderful way to spell joy. Jesus, others, you. And so you learn to put yourself absolutely last out of everybody in your life. You make sure everyone else is taken care of first, and you are dead last. And if there is not enough for you, you think, okay. And there's no thought of, I deserve something, I deserve respect, I deserve care. It's always, what can you do for others? What can you do for others? And that sort of setup, especially from a young age, ends up really, really depleting you and making you feel unimportant in your own life. And you should be the star of your own life. You are the main character in your life. Everyone else is a supporting character. And if you hear me say that and you think, no, that's incorrect, no, that's a selfish thing for me to think, then that's great. Then that is showing the conditioning that you have, that you don't deserve to be first place in your life. And what I really, really encourage is let all that stuff come up and notice it. Notice if you are, if you feel deserving of the first place in your life. And it's okay if not, but it's just important to understand where you place yourself in your life. And generally, if you were raised in a Christian household, you will be really used, especially if you're a woman, you'll be very used to putting yourself almost like at the very, very bottom of the totem pole. And sometimes it's just what happens. It's unavoidable, especially if you are a caretaker or you have children and you have people who depend on you. It can seem very normal to be the last person that you think of. But when you find yourself in that position, generally what happens is that actually nobody is thinking of you. If you are very used to putting yourself last and you allow yourself to do that and you allow others to do that, that means no one has you first place. And I think it's really important to have a self-care practice, because somebody somewhere in the world needs to be doing some sort of service to let you know that you are worth caring for. And self-care is just that. It's care for yourself. It's self-care or it's self-love. And it's important for you to send yourself the signal and for you to understand what it is that you need, so that when other people try to take care of you and say, what do you need? You know what you need. You can say, you know what, actually right now, I just need 10 minutes of silence. Or like right now, I would really love to just take a walk or something. But if you don't know, then you can't give it to yourself, and no one can give it to you. So I think it's a really interesting practice to take a moment and think about how you, like, where you rate yourself in your life. How important are you in your life? So if you want, just hit pause and just spend a moment thinking about how important you think you are in your life, or where you think you deserve to be in the level of importance in your life. And then once you do that, then come back and ask yourself if you do any sort of service to yourself. Do you send any sort of signal to yourself that is signaling that you deserve care and you deserve love? And it might be surprising or unsurprising to find out that you actually don't do that much for yourself, or that you don't think you're worth caring for. And for me, I'll just tell the story of my first attempt at self-care or self-love. Is I was reading the book by Brene Brown, The Gifts of Imperfection, which is a beautiful book, and I highly recommend it. I'll try and leave a link below. And in it, she talks about being enough and how you are worthy right now. And as my first act of self-care or self-love, I thought, well, let me look myself in the eye in the mirror and tell myself that I'm worthy, tell myself that I'm good enough. So I walked to the mirror and I saw my reflection, and my reflection knew what I was about to do. I knew that I was going to go try and tell myself that I was worthy of love and that I was good enough. And I saw myself in the mirror, and I just got flooded with like such intense feelings of shame, because all the church conditioning ran in of like, of course you're not good enough. Only God is good enough. Like, you're so selfish and egotistical and disgusting and proud for trying to look at yourself in the mirror, which is a proud thing, and then try to tell yourself you're good enough. And no one is good enough. Only God is good enough. So I like ran away in shame and, spiraled for like 2 hours of like, why did I do that? Why did I think that I was worthy of love? Of course I'm not. That's why Jesus died for me. He died because I'm unworthy. And the only way that I'm worthy at all is because he's dead, which is a whole other thing. But it took me a while. It took me a couple of days to like recoup from that attempt and then to go try it again. And really, I think the thing when you try and do something like this and send yourself the signal that you're worth caring for, the thing that shows up is all the conditioning that you have against it, which is really important to notice, because you shouldn't have conditioning. You shouldn't have years of conditioning telling you that you're unworthy. And if you grow up in a religious setting, you will have that. You'll have decades of conditioning telling you that you will never be good enough. You are constantly unworthy. And the only thing that can bring you worthiness is the fact that someone else died, which is so irrational that I can't get into it right now. But my main point is that if you have grown up in that religious setting, you might always have this built-in fear that you are not good enough and you are constantly unworthy. And there is nothing in your life that sends you the signal that yes, you are worthy and yes, you are good enough. And the signal that you must send to, it has to be from you to you. Because if somebody else sends you the signal that yes, you're good enough, then you get attached to that. And you get attached to this external thing needing to make you feel good enough, which is why they attach that feeling to God, because then you always feel like you need God to fill that hole inside of you, which is why they tell you in the first place that you're not good enough. But when you have a self-care practice, it's you telling yourself that I am worth caring for, and here's how I am going to do it. And it's you making time in your day to let yourself know, I deserve love and I deserve care. And you start to learn who, first of all, who yourself is that needs this care. And then you learn how to care for this self that you are also getting to know. And if you grew up in this religious setting, you might not have a sense of self to care for. So I think a self-care practice is really important to set up for all these reasons. For the reason of discovering who the self is that needs care, and discovering how you care for yourself and how you love yourself, and also understanding that you have everything you need inside of you. You can get to know yourself and you can care for yourself, which then allows you to move through life a little bit more confident because you are your provider. you know that you're keeping yourself safe and you consider yourself important and you will take care of yourself. And those are really important things to know. So I'm going to suggest a couple of things. One is to try as many things as possible, because you don't know how you receive care until you try things and then kind of one sticks. And it's something that just makes you feel joy and keeps you present. That's it. So for me, I started with yoga. It brought me joy, it made me feel capable, and it kept me present. And that was my self-care practice for years. And then I eventually got very used to yoga to the point that it didn't keep me present anymore. And then so I started journaling, and journaling has been able to keep me present since then. And I've added some other things, but I think that in order to create a self-care practice, it has to be something that brings you joy and keeps you present. So it can be a cup of tea, it can be a book, it can be a yoga practice, it can be a swimming practice, it can be fencing, whatever it is. But try things out. Look for things that bring you joy and keep you present, and give yourself permission to try a bunch of things and to build one block at a time. And if you've never done a self-care practice before, I suggest that you start small. Start with 1 minute. Start with 1 minute of being nice to yourself, trying to tell yourself that you have a self that is worth caring for. And if you've never done it before, it'll be the longest minute of your life. And if you have something that you do as a self-care practice, or something that you found as a very easy introductory self-practice, feel free to leave it below. I know that this community, people read the comments, and it does help them. And maybe you have something that I haven't tried yet that I would love to pick up. But I would say start with 1 minute. Be nice to yourself. Be really, truly, sincerely loving to yourself for 1 minute, whatever that looks like. And start there and let yourself build. Maybe after a week of 1 minute of being nice to yourself, you can build to 90 seconds. But understand that what you are fighting is the conditioning that has made you feel constantly unworthy. And there's nothing for you to prove. You don't need to prove your worth. You are already good enough and you are already worth loving. And a self-care practice is simply acknowledging that and sending the signal to yourself that, yes, these things are true, and here is how I'm going to provide for you. So, highly recommend self-care practice. And again, if you have anything, drop it below. And if you have a story of a failed self-care practice, drop it below as well, so I feel less alone. But thank you guys for being here. I see people showing up, and I see people helping each other, and it is really a beautiful thing. And I hope that being here gives you hope and allows you to build better practices for yourself, because you deserve love and you deserve care. And I really encourage you to take a step this week, or maybe tomorrow, or as soon as possible, to send yourself the signal that you are absolutely worth caring for and worth loving. So thank you guys, and I'll see you next week.